In a previous video, I showed you how to find articles. So, how to search for program evaluation articles to try to find best practices when you're doing program planning. We found this article. There were other articles on there, but we're going to use this article as an example of how to read and summarize when you're putting together best practices or a summary of best practices. So first things first, we're going to read through the abstract just to make sure that this is what we want. So abstract first. Then you actually skip this entire first section. So we're not really interested that much. Maybe to like pick up, if we don't know what SV and DV is, this might be the place that you would pick that up. But we're really just going to kind of scroll down, and what we're looking for is we want to know what they're doing. So here's kind of a little summary and their research question. So basically, what do they want to find out and about when they implemented their program? So we're going to start looking at the method. So what did they do? So if we look down here, we can see that they have 229, and these are important things to include in a summary, in any summary. What the title of the article is, the author's names, how the authors did the study. So they used, at a small university in the Northeast, 229 incoming students. So we know that there are freshmen. They, let's see, had people complete a pre-test. Pre-test, I'm scanning. During orientation, it looks like, during orientation, they were assigned to one of 23 different bystander program sessions led by 2 trained program facilitators. So we've got that they're assigned to these different things to watch, and you should be reading this more closely. I'm just skimming this. This is the first time I've read this article. It looks like half of the students were randomly assigned to receive the bystander program from faculty, staff, or administration, and half were assigned to graduate or undergraduate student facilitator pairs, so peer education. So in this, we can see they were interested to find what's most effective when you're talking about intimate partner violence. Is it most effective if you have a trained professional doing it, or is it most effective when you have trained peer educators doing it? So that kind of gives us a gist of what's going on here. So you would read this section about the methods. So read through the methods, exactly how it was done, and really try to understand it, how the method, how they decided to study which is better for their learners, to have a peer educator or to have a professional. This is measures. Sometimes this will be like a separate section when they're talking about their methods. How did they assess it? Well, they assessed their attitudes toward dating violence, their attitudes towards rape, a rape empathy scale, and bystander efficacy. This analysis part is basically how are you going to add these things together to sort of come up with a score or a subset of scores that determines those attitudes or beliefs or behaviors. Then you get down to the results section. So you're interested in this as well. Like, what did they find out? And there may be some statistical information in here that you really have to dig to try to understand it. Do the best that you can with this. Now, if you look at table 1, it has mean, standard deviations, and percentages. That's something that you should know as an undergraduate student. So those are not so hard to understand. You've encountered means and standard deviations before. If you get stuck on something, this is why it's important to be on a computer or be close to a computer when you're doing this. Google it. If you don't understand a term that somebody is using, first look for context, see if it explains itself in the context. But secondly, look to see if you can find it on Google. So they're presenting the results. They're going to tell you what they found. So that's results, results, results. And this is a part that you're definitely going to want to pay attention to. Then you should get to toward the end, and they usually have a discussion. Here it is. Here's the discussion section. This is where they're taking all the results that their study did and talking about it. So what does it mean? We got these results, we're reporting them, but what does it actually mean? What do we recommend? What do we think future studies should study? What do we think program planners should do? All of that is going to be in the discussion section. So again, a very important thing, especially for doing program planning. So read through that carefully and make sure that you understand that. Funding references, a little less important unless you want to look through the references to see if there are other studies that you should be reading as well. So there may be other program evaluations in the references. Now, remember I told you to kind of skip that first section? That first section is really, it helps if you don't know much about your topic. So if you don't know much about sexual violence or dating violence or victimization, this would be something that you would want to read. But it's a little less important when it comes to program evaluation, because here are the things that you want to tell is who are they? Who did they study and where? How did they study them in terms of, the effectiveness of this program? And what did they find? Here's the key. This all needs to be in your own words. So when you are describing what these researchers did, these two researchers, Hines and Reed, you want to make sure that you are using your own words. And there are a couple of ways that you can ensure that you do that. The first big way is to close this so you're not looking at it. So don't look at the article while you're trying to type up a summary of it. I know that sounds counterintuitive, that what you're used to doing is maybe going through and taking a section, and sometimes I've seen students who copy it and stick it into their own paper or into their own summary. That is not okay. That is actually considered plagiarism because you're taking their words. I've seen students take a section and then just change around a few words. And that's what we call paraphrasing plagiarism. So that's when you really you're still using sort of their order, their concepts, and really mostly their words. And what it tends to do when you're summarizing something is it makes it a mess. Like the person reading it can't understand you. So what I'd like to have you consider when you're trying to explain what happened in an article is think about describing what you just read to a classmate, somebody on your team, a friend, a roommate, your parents, whoever, that you would explain, hey, I just read this interesting article. These people wanted to find out if it's better to use peers to educate about domestic violence, or is it better to use trained professionals? So they set up this study, and this is how they set it up. They had people take a pretest, and then they randomly assigned them to these different groups. And here's what they found. They found for topics like this, this, and this, it was more effective to have a professional. But for the rest of the topics, it was more important to have a peer, something like that. So see how you verbally describe it? It means that you had to read the article, get it in your own head, and put it out in your own words. That's how you do a summary. And you can't do that by looking at the article. You will be too tempted, if you have this article up in front of you, you are going to be too tempted to use their words, thinking that their words are better than your words. So, you can refer back to it for like concepts if you forget like a little bit, but really, I would recommend not looking at it at all and trying to do it from memory. Write that up, make sure that you are citing where you got the information from, and you have a great summary. So I hope that helped a little bit in terms of summarizing articles. Just remember, don't copy and paste, don't paraphrase, don't switch a couple of words around. Really try to coherently explain. And you can move the sections around a little bit. Remember, you can just skim or not even really read that first introduction section, because you really want to know, what did these researchers do and what did they find? And how is that going to help you with planning your own program? Hopefully it will give you some tips. Okay, hope that helped.